Hey, welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. We're glad you're tuning into this episode. We are a viewer and listener supported podcast, so we really appreciate you listening, watching on YouTube. We really encourage you to subscribe to whatever platform you're using. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, or if you're on Apple or however you listen to a podcast, be sure and subscribe. We greatly appreciate it. Also, make comments if you like it and share it if you like it. We really need people to make comments and share the episodes that you like. And then also, if you're not already a supporter, we really would encourage you to go to spiritualityadventures.com and you can pick a tier, and we have bonus content for every type of giver. This is a nonprofit, so they're tax-deductible donations, but we do provide bonus content for those who are supporters. So be a part of the team, help support Spirituality Adventures, and we're so glad you're tuning into this episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Spirituality Adventures. Thanks for joining us on this new episode with Genesis B. Thank you, Genesis, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I met Genesis in person maybe a year ago at a rooftop event at Rod Colburn's house. And I got to hear you perform in person, but I'd learned about you prior to that through Doug Padgett and Vote Common Good and Samir. And that's a whole new crew for me.
Okay.
I've met that whole crew in the last 2.5, 3 years or something like that.
Yeah, good people.
Yeah. So thanks so much for being on Spirituality Adventures. I love your work. Genesis is an artist. She's a rapper. She is an activist. She's got a fascinating story. So we're going to dive in. I first like to just kind of get some of your background story for our audience, Genesis, like where you grew up, maybe your home life, maybe any of your spiritual background that you would like to share with us, and then maybe bring us up into the 2016 protest and when that went viral, and kind of take us through that right up to where you're at now. So I know that's a lot, but
yeah, I don't identify as an activist, actually.
Okay. Advocate.
Yeah, you could say advocate. That's more line. I'm an artist. I'm an artist who creates art around things that trouble me, challenge me, things that I take issue with, things that bring me joy. I can understand how some might think I'm an activist because of that, but I don't identify as such.
All right. Well, tell us where you grew up, your family life, your spiritual background. Give us some history.
Well, I grew up in Mississippi. That was my childhood from age, whatever fourth grade until I graduated from college. I lived in Mississippi. And before that, I was bouncing around as a military brat. Yeah, my upbringing in terms of spirituality was, I think, unique. I didn't know it was unique at the time, but both of my parents converted to Islam before I was born. My father, before he converted, was Baptist, and I come from a long line of Baptist preachers. So my grandfather is Reverend Clyde Briggs, who was an activist in the 1960s and 50s. And my mother's background was in Catholicism. And my father, the way he raised us around the beautiful religion of Islam was around freedom and liberation. And every Friday we would read not only the Quran, but the Torah and the gospel as well. My parents thought, when I asked them later in life why they did that, they thought it was important that we understood the similarities of the three main monotheistic religions, so that we can open our mind and understand that truth is a river that runs through many countries.
Yeah.
And he knew one day we would get old enough to see what we're seeing now, whether it's with Israel and Palestine or other wars that are waged in the name of religion, so that we would understand that that is BS,
Mm.
because we're all siblings. We're all just rambunctious siblings, right?
I like that.
Yeah, so it was interesting. So Islam taught me about Islam is a religion of humanity and around compassion and peace and how to stand brave when you see others who are having trouble standing for themselves or speaking for themselves. It teaches you to stand and speak up, and to have no fear, to have no fear. Um, as I got older, I started to dive deeper into, like when I went to NYU, I took some courses around Jewish ethics. And I joined a church congregation called Middle Collegiate Church, and started to understand more around Christianity and the teachings of Jesus. And
That's
taking
Jackie Lewis's church, right?
Reverend Jacqueline
Yes.
Lewis,
Yeah.
yep,
I've had her on here. Yeah, she's awesome. Love
yes,
Jackie.
incredible,
Mm.
incredible woman. I can't say enough
Hmm.
things, so I won't even try to start. Um,
Hmm.
so just learning more about Taoism, Buddhism, Sufism, which is the mystic form
Hmm.
of Islam. I'm just a lifelong scholar when it comes to spirituality, and trying to just be open and non-judgmental about people's beliefs, even if they're atheists or you don't believe that there's a God, or, I don't, there's something to learn there from everybody's beliefs.
Mm. Yeah, I'm curious, were your parents influenced, I'm guessing by Malcolm X, but is that accurate, or
Um, I
I'm
mean,
their conversion to Islam? I was just kind of
yeah, it wasn't through
curious.
the Nation of Islam. No,
Okay.
it was, as my father is, I think I recall him saying he was stationed somewhere and one of his roommates came back with the Quran. I don't know if his roommate like went over to the Middle East and came back, or just went somewhere else, but my father picked up the Quran and was moved by the poetry and
Mm.
by the message, and it spoke to him. But it wasn't an introduction through the Nation of Islam, no.
Okay.
But
Interesting.
that's not to say he is not, and we are not inspired by Malcolm X, because
Sure.
we are in a lot of ways, especially when he was waking up around the unity and the unification of humankind, and waking up from his programming of the industry of division, as I like to call it. And that's when people become really dangerous, when they realize that
Yeah.
across the board, across race, across genders or non-genders, or whatever you want to say, we as human beings are all complex human beings worthy of dignity, all God's children, and should be working in tandem to defeat the ills and the evils we see in the world,
Mm.
who are harming other people. That's a dangerous person. Martin Luther King woke up similarly before his death.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. It's interesting. I was pastoring a growing evangelical church that I had planted in 1990 when 2011 hit. And I had friends that were, working in the Middle East with Arab Muslims, and so I'd had a heart for that. In fact, Sam actually went over and lived in Lebanon. My podcast producer that you met before we started,
Yeah.
and lived in Lebanon for a few years. And anyway, it opened my eyes to you know because I had just had like sort of an evangelical view of the Muslim world, which, you know, is separation, 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 right?
Sure.
And so when I started traveling in the Middle East and living and staying with Arab Muslim friends, both Sunni and what's
Shia.
yeah, Shia, I met some of the most beautiful people on the planet, some of the most loving, hospitable people on the planet, and it kind of started doing a whole number on me. So here I was preaching after 9/11, and the whole message out there was, and from the evangelical world, was like God's judging America for homosexuality, or, hatred toward Muslims, and I was a kind of a rare voice. I started talking about loving Muslims. And I started, trying to bring in a whole stream of people who viewed Muslims from a different perspective, and then started just working with Arab Muslims, Palestinians. I've been in West Bank and Gaza and all those places, and so it changed my whole worldview to what you're expressing now. You know, that was a part of my journey into seeing in a more connective way how we can unite and do good in the world
Well, thank you
together.
for being that voice of moral courage at a time where many people weren't speaking like that. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Says
it was a
about your
crazy
character.
it was a crazy time for sure. Um, so moving into your at NYU, and you're at Middle Church. Tell us about this protest that you did in 2016. I just kind of want people to understand a little of your background, and then I want to, after we kind of get that, I want to dive into your artist philosophy and meditation and some of your music and rap albums and art and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, first, give us a little intro into this protest that you did in 2016 in New York.
Well, for context, it was after I graduated NYU. I graduated in probably 2011, so 5 years after I graduated, and before I was introduced to Reverend Jackie Lewis in the Middle Church.
Okay.
Um, 2016, our governor, Phil Bryant, declared April Confederate Heritage Month. I don't believe it was the
And
first
you're
time.
saying our governor was the governor of Mississippi.
The governor of
Yeah,
Mississippi
yeah.
at the time was Phil Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
And this was not long after Dylan Roof went into a Black church and murdered 9 people with the Confederate flag displayed all over his social media pages. So when I heard that the governor was declaring April Confederate Heritage Month, I had the image of Emmett Till replaying in my mind as I was reading the headline. I thought about all of our ancestors who fought against white supremacy, especially during that time of segregation and before. I thought about my grandfather, Reverend Clyde Briggs, who was violently targeted by Confederate people, KKK, law enforcement, White Citizens Council. I just, those were going through my head, and I said, I want to make a bold statement, unapologetic statement denouncing this. Happened to have a show lined up that same month at the end of April. I think it was April 26th at SOB's. And yeah, my manager at the time didn't know what I was going to do. The club didn't know what I was going to do. I just brought my backpack with my props, which was a noose and a large Confederate flag. I had cut a hole in it so I could drape over myself. And at a sold out show, I draped it over and held a noose over my neck and held up a fist and had some choice words for Governor Phil Bryant around the audacity, and wanted to show him how I celebrated and what it means for me as someone who is a descendant of African Americans, a descendant of the unique slave, and a descendant of freedom fighters who fought against this ideology. And for all of the thousands of lynchings that were reported or not reported in Mississippi alone, not just across the South, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it meant to me. That's what your history and heritage means to me, is savagery of you killing and maiming and murdering, raping Black citizens, Black Americans, American citizens, terrorism. So I did the protest, and it went viral in 2016. Of course, it was when Trump was rising to power, and the internet became very different than it was before in terms of people being very bold, not just real people, but like bots, people trying to incite violence between white folks and Black folks, between the industry of division, as I like to call it. Whatever the cultural war is, it looks very different, but it was just a very heightened state in 2016. So lots of support, lots of backlash, and which I expected. I didn't expect the picture to go viral. like it did. So I didn't expect that type of perception or an exposure of a very localized issue. Like the Mississippi state flag has a Confederate emblem in it, Confederate Heritage Month. Like these are very local issues, and the New Zealand Times wrote about it. So it's like had people talking who maybe a lot of people said, I didn't even know that the Mississippi state flag that still has the Confederate emblem in its canton, or yeah, it was an interesting time. And after that, I connected with a lot of activists who were fighting that fight before I even did my protest, whether it's Dr. J. Adelia Carthen, Anjanou Ellis, Leah Campbell with Mississippi Rising Coalition, Danielle Holmes, who was with at the time, Mississippi Poor People's Campaign, Maisie Brown, like student activists who are, doing their thing. And the flag flew for 122 years. So it didn't start with me. It didn't start with them. It was a fight, over a century fight,
Yeah. Wow. Is it William Barber that does the Poor People's Campaign? Is that right? Yeah. We partner with a church here. I'm pastoring again in a progressive Christian church now, open and affirming, and we partner with the Poor People's Campaign here in Kansas City, where I'm at. I was just on a Zoom call with William Barber just a couple of weeks ago. There on Ash Wednesday when they were, gathering in Washington D.C. to do a kind of protest on Lent on the Ash Wednesday kind of thing. So very cool. So that 2016 protest kind of went viral, launched you into, like, you ended up connecting with all kinds of people and basically went on tour, I guess. Is that, how would you describe those years right after that, with the people that you connected with, new mentors that came into your life? It kind of sets you on a new trajectory to some degree. Is that right, or is it just the same trajectory on steroids?
It threw me into the fight to change the Mississippi state flag. That was not my intention when I did the protest. I was just saying how I felt about Confederate History Month, Heritage Month, in celebration of that. It wasn't just activists who were fighting against the flag that I connected with. It was people who I connected with, neo-Confederate folks who wanted the flag to fly. And I had conversations with them and held civil discourse sessions and brought people to the table who were across the divide. Because as I said before, the industry of division is very strategic. And we do all have a lot more in common than we like to admit, especially in Mississippi, one of the poorest states in the Union, speaking of Poor People's Campaign and what we can learn from each other and how to collaborate out of certain issues that are affecting us all, whether it be the healthcare system, whether it be lack of education or access to education, poverty. Poverty is a big one. But anyway, I spoke with them as well and was curious about the upbringing and teachings they had in their household, because it was very different from what we're taught. There's a whole museum called the Jeff Davis Museum that they would take us. Jeff Davis was the president of the Confederacy. They would take us to his home, which was a museum, and field trips, as Black students. And we go into this place, it's a whole romanticization. There's no Black people in there. The mention of Confederacy, of like the cornerstone speech of the Confederacy. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's outlined very detailed that the highest level of potential of a Black person is servitude. That's that in the cornerstone speech of what they believe. So I wasn't sure if those who do support that flag know the facts and know history. I said, let's look at the Sons of Confederate Veterans page. It's a special interest group of which they belong to. So let's look at this website together. On the front page is Bedford Forest. one of the first high-ranking members of the KKK, the largest terrorism group responsible for deaths of thousands. I said, did you know that? Some said yeah, some said no, right? So trying to understand the romanticization and the whitewashing of history through their lens helped me better understand how the industry of division works. And it works in silos so that we can't compare notes. And it works with tooth fairy Santa Claus from your grandmother, your great grandmother, of like, you know, this is what you believe. We're all just the sum of our ideologies, including myself. And I have to deprogram myself from my own ideologies to think that I'm immune to the industry of division. Nobody's immune. You're either a pawn, a player, or you've escaped. Very few have escaped. I'm still trying to escape, but at least I'm aware of it now. I wasn't aware before. So speaking with people from across the issue and humanizing the issue, and me being able to see them as human, and you know, because I assume they don't see me as human. That was my assumption, because you believe in this doctrine. You say you stand fervently behind this doctrine that says I'm not human, right? I said, let me test the theory. Look me in my eyes and tell me that you stand by that part of the doctrine. Humanizing the issues, working from a place of curiosity, you know, but it helped me understand better and heal from my own racial violence that has occurred in my family, to not harbor that and then use that same hatred that was used against me to hate others, because that's the cycle. That's how the industry of division has become so brilliantly effective, because we don't want to break those cycles of violence and those cycles of hatred, because it feels better not to. And I'm nobody's victim, you know, and yeah, it's deep.
Thank you for your voice on that. I love it, appreciate it, inspired by it. Yeah. So you, the industry of division, I was reading on your website about your artist philosophy. I read your artist philosophy, and I love that.
Oh, you did? Good.
Yeah, the quote was, liberate the ego from the prison of identity. And I've even re-examined my own. You know, I grew up in a evangelical thing, which I'm grateful for so many of it. I love Jesus, you know, and there's so many good things. But then there were things that actually I don't think are healthy at all. And I think one of them is a theology of separation versus a theology of connection, interconnection, interdependence. And so I was fascinated by your the philosophy and practice of people, not things, the four barriers that create division, separation, fear, control, communication, acceptance, and then your first principle of the dignity of every human being and the complexity of those humans, and then the second principle of the value, trust of your own perception, at the same time recognizing the reality of other people's perceptions, and then moving toward and what I was reading in between was, I love the practices of meditation that you gave. I just finished I went into rehab about 6 years ago for I was an insomniac, and I got addicted to Xanax and alcohol. So I've been a part of the 12-step program now for over 5 years. And then one of the therapies that helped me was DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, which had a mindful meditation component in it. It's a cognitive behavioral therapy with a mindful meditation component. So I ended up I just finished a 2-year training with Tara Brock and Jack Kornfield. They come out of a Vipassana Buddhist meditation tradition. So I'm now a certified mindful meditation teacher with a 2-year certification. And it's really been therapy for me, right? But it's also been fascinating. I've listened to a few hundred Dharma talks now. And so when I was reading your artist philosophy and how you were weaving in practices of meditation and some of the influences that you've had from the world of, you know, the Eastern world of meditation, Uh, I I loved that. I love that.
Glad it
So
resonated with you.
yeah, so I found that fascinating that you embedded that into your artist's philosophy, whether you're painting or rapping or you're doing your poetry, spoken poetry, and I'm sure I'm missing other elements of your artistic expression. You're such a talented person.
Thank
I've
you.
listened to everything that I could get my hands on in terms of your albums, and from Bandcamp to I have Apple Music, and I've loved it. I've introduced you to many of my friends who love rap and hip hop and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I
There's a
appreciate
time or two when we've been listening to some of your rap albums with friends of mine, and we were in tears because of some of
it.
the depth of your work. So,
Thank you.
yeah, give me some. Yeah, give me some. How did you get into the meditation part of this component? Because you came out of this Islamic family who were activists. You become an artist, and then how did you get into the meditation part of that? Your philosophy. What
It
led you that down the path of meditation? I guess maybe.
After I did the protest and it blew up, it scared me. Me having that large of a platform scared me. I wasn't prepared. I didn't know what I was supposed to say after that. My own voice and power scared me that it could reach that many people. It was jarring and alarming. And before I went on the whole press runs and linked up with everybody, I went through a time of being a recluse in my apartment in New York. I was drinking heavily. I was trying to understand what was going on. It was very much like not an ego death, but like an ego degrading. I don't believe in ego death, but I kept asking Source, okay, what is it I should say? What am I supposed to say? I will never want to divide. I've always been about unifying, being a unifying force. I've been an activist since I was 15 years old. It's always been my thing. And I did something I've never done as an artist up until that point, and that was pick up a paintbrush. And the first thing I painted were these barrier strokes. They've now become my signature strokes. You can see similarly, they're in every single painting that I do, whether prominently or in the corner, like a signature. These barriers, because I couldn't understand the barriers I couldn't see them between myself and the people who were harassing me online, who were calling me all types of homophobic, misogynistic things, racist things. What are these barriers? And I kept painting them. And as I'm painting, this is the flow state now, right? This is the meditation now, right? Without me understanding what it is.
Mm.
The phrase people, not things just kept looping in my brain, looping in my brain. And it's not a phrase that I feel like I created or is mine, but for some reason that phrase kept looping in my brain. I think it's an ancient statement. I think it's an ancient truth that we've forgotten. And I think it was Source telling me to remind people that not just around people over profit or people over material things, it's not just that, it's deeper of people are not things. People are not just the labels that we ascribe to them. I'm not just the labels that are ascribed to me or that I ascribe to myself. If I am only those, then I am a prison to my identity. And I need to break through. I need to liberate my ego from the prison of identity and realize, first and foremost, I am a spirit occupying this avatar, which is a human being, as are you, as is she, as is they. Complex human beings worthy of dignity first and foremost, and let that be the start of the way I see the world.
Mm.
It sounds simple, but we see the opposite. We're programmed to see the differences first. We're programmed to see the stereotypes and all of the things that we impose on this person because they are Muslim, straight white male, woman, whatever, Black. Okay, then there's the subcategories. What type of Black? What class is this Black person in? Right? Blah, blah, blah. All of these subcategories, we start there. And that's where the industry of division teaches us to start.
Mm.
To keep us to understand, make us feel like we are not as connected as we are, not just with each other, but everything around us, nature, cosmos, time, space, you know. So I'm getting a little off track, but I was in this flow state of meditation and doing these barriers. And it was around this time I developed the meditation called conceptual resistance, where I would just stare at this cup. I would sit down, my line of sight would be on this cup. And then I said, I wonder if I can imagine another line of sight on this cup from this chair that I set to the side, as if I'm sitting in that chair and looking at this cup, not just the cup. What am I seeing beyond the cup? What am I hearing in the room based on my position? So increasing the amount of perspectives that I can see at once, just using my imagination, just using my senses, because we are sensory beings, my ears, my smell, my sight, and seeing how many perspectives I can hold at once. And so far I've gotten up to 4. This is after doing this for like 8 years. So when you're developing this muscle, it's called conceptual resistance, because I'm resisting my concept of reality. And I don't suggest children do this, because they're already trying to figure out reality. Right. But as adults, we should be strengthening this muscle to understand there can be one issue. You are inherently wrong on what you think on this issue compared to what everyone else thinks. Even if they agree, their perspective and experience and life experience and the way they think about the issue is going to be different. So it should never trigger me. It should never blow my mind that this person sees something different than I do, because they are only just the sum of their ideologies, the sum of their experiences. So this was me preparing myself to speak to the other side. And wow. Just as I was arriving at these things and developing this meditation, I get a ring from Irshad Manji, and she has gone on to be one of my mentors, including Reverend Jackie Lewis or Susan Davis. She runs a organization called Moral Courage, of which I'm now the global ambassador of this organization. And she reaches out and she was like, would you consider having these conversations with people? And like, can we just like tape one of them just to see like how it goes? And I was open. I was open because I was already aligning myself with this concept of people, not things. Like, if I can't even have a conversation with somebody, if it's safe, of course, I'm not telling people to put themselves in harm's way or like speak to people who want to hurt them. Of course not. But the majority of the time, that's not the case. It just feels like a physical threat when people disagree with us because we're tied to our identity. It feels like a disagreement of what we believe is a threat to our identity, right?
Wow.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff. But anyway, that's where the meditation part came from. And going through these meditations, I also went through getting sober because of the meditations. I didn't mean to. It was just part of the concept, an unintended consequence. I stopped drinking alcohol. I don't smoke weed. I even stopped smoking hookah, which is, yeah. Like, I still have like everyone has their addictions. Like I'm sipping on coffee right now, but the more I understood that my clarity of this world and my connection to this world is inhibited by substances, I started to get addicted to my clarity. And it started feeling like way better than the disconnection I was having.
Interesting.
With source or with other people.
Interesting.
Were fueling my paranoia around people or my agitation or anxiety. I felt all of this as I was playing around with sobriety, testing it out. So yeah, there was a lot of unintended consequences of me getting clear and removing those barriers from myself, first and foremost. And that
interesting.
It's an accountability. I'm not asking anyone to remove the barriers. This is just what I've done. And then I wrote it down in case anyone else wants to try.
Well, that's beautiful. It's on your website, genesisb.com.
And peoplenotthings.com.
And peoplenotthings.com. And it's a beautiful read with questions for journaling and meditation practices, and I really loved that. So thank you for that. And I'd
It means
encourage
so much to
people.
me that you really took the time to read it and sit with it, and that you resonated with it. And it sounds like your journey has been very similar, of you identifying the ways in which you were a pawn in the industry of division, opening your mind and heart to meet people who they told you to stay separate from, and how that clarity can lead to so much more in your heart and experience as a human being. And I want more people to go through that and feel that, because
Mm,
that's what it means to truly be alive.
mm, yes, I could say amen, amen.
Amen.
The old Hebrew, make it so, Lord. Anyway, so I was fascinated to here. I was listening to your interview with Frank Schaefer, which you did a few years ago, and Frank's been on my podcast. I've been on his, and he shared that you guys. So I've had, Doug Padgett's a friend. I've been on the Vote Common Good bus myself last year. I was on it for the first time last year.
Nice.
But you've worked with Vote Common Good, and you and Frank were on that tour back. I don't know when that was, but he brought up that story about how, I don't know, I guess at one of your stops there was a pretty strong white racist group. I don't know if it was Proud Boys or
Those
somebody,
Proud Boys, yeah.
Proud Boys, who were really there pretty aggressively, physically wanting to threaten you, right? And Frank said he kind of freaked out and wanted to run, and you responded in this amazing, courageous way
Hmm.
that ended up turning the hearts of these men, and they end up staying with you guys till like midnight, helping you break down and stuff. That
Hmm.
just blew me away when I heard that. I was just like, holy crap.
Hmm.
I just thought that was such an interesting story, because what you just shared about the division of people, and then how you were, I don't
Yeah,
know,
it's a practice.
yeah, that was like a practice of that very principle. Like, wow, I was just so moved by that.
Well, they came and they were shouting down the people on our tour who were speaking, but mainly the women, really shouting down the women. That seems to be like a thing. So I'm watching, and they're live streaming while they're doing this. I would like to say that my actions were altruistic, but my actions were strategic. Like, I am a scholar of war and strategy and Sun Tzu. When I see that they are taping, one of our tour mates started to get angry and approached him. And I very calmly, I went up to him as he's yelling, they're yelling at, talking to each other, it's getting heated. I went up to my tour mate. I said, hey, can I speak with you for a second? And I pulled him aside and we sat down, and I said, this is what they want to show. They want to see you angry. They want to show their followers, to discredit our message. So don't do that. Don't play into it. This is part of the industry of division, is perception. So when it was my time to go up on the stage, before I started my piece, I noticed, because I'm observing, I'm through my meditation, I'm sensing the energy, who's the leader, listening, watching, tasting, smelling. I invited one of them to come up on the stage and embrace me before I do my piece. What I'm doing there is not because I want to go around hugging Proud Boys. Strategically, what I'm doing there is I'm appealing to the part of him who wants the world, his viewers, us, to think he is a decent human being. He has a want for that. Most human beings do. So he obliges. He comes up on stage, he embraces me. I later go to the live stream and see what the reactions are. Confusion. His live stream is confused of what's going on. This is how we emulate in the world what humanity is. This is how we show and exemplify people, not things, and how we exemplify of like, you can be a pawn of the industry of division. That doesn't mean that I have to be. Let me show you what it means to be free. Of course, I could get backlash of like, why are you hugging Proud Boys? Why are you speaking to neo-Confederates? I get that, but I'm a free person. So my perception of like how other people view me, I don't want to say I don't care because I feel like that's what everybody says. It's more like what is the outcome? Judge me by the outcomes of my strategies. Okay, so that disarmed them in a way where he left the stage, and I think they were just quietly stunned of what happened and didn't want to be the assholes because they came up there wanting us to look like the assholes. That's why people, they're antagonizing us to react. Reaction is not a good strategy. Reacting to what everyone else does, taking a breath, being calm, and asking yourself in this moment, what behavior aligns with my belief?
It's so powerful. I love that Viktor Frankl statement, between stimulus and response, there's a space, and in that space is your freedom. And that's he was a Holocaust survivor.
Wow.
And
I never heard that.
I quote him when I'm doing mindful meditation, because meditation, from the neuroscience of it, actually, that amygdala that's reactionary is the ancient part of our brain, the reptilian part of our brain, just fight, flight, freeze. But the prefrontal cortex part of our brain is where we can expand our freedom. And so
that's what Earshot teaches with moral courage.
Isn't that beautiful?
Taking that moment to pause, to go from our, what call it primal brain, give oxygen to that prefrontal, and rather than just reacting, because that is what freedom is. Like you don't have the control to make me react or to trigger me. It's probably not going to happen, just only because I've done so much work to understand what's happening in the moment.
Yes.
And I'm just not at the whim of the moment. I'm not at the whim of the conversation. I have the agency and power to create the culture of the situation or to affect the culture or the nature of the interaction. We're just not like you react and I react and you do this. Nope. So yeah, by the end, they were helping us pick up chairs, and we were able to, just kind of talk to them as human beings. And once the charade of like we're coming to live stream and get a reaction and like agitate you all and see how you react, once that was broken, it's like, I see what you're doing, like, let me do this. Why don't you show them, show your viewers you hugging me.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it was powerful. And but to me, I didn't think it through. I just naturally just did what I felt I needed to do. I wanted to be heard. And that's something also that moral courage teaches. It's like, if I want to be heard, I have to hear other people. I have to be willing to hear other people, even if that's just how it goes. Because if I come in there and I know everything and there's nothing I can learn here, people feel that, and they're going to want to shut down and not let me speak either. But I wanted to be heard. I wanted my poem to be heard and not shouted over. So I needed them to be quiet.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I love your there's so many, you've posted a lot of new individual singles. You've got your albums out. I would encourage people to go to Spotify, Apple, Bandcamp, look up Genesis B, and love your work with your rapping and your spoken poetry. So beautiful. I love the piece that you did on Free Palestine.
Thank you.
You did that for us, I think, last year up on the rooftop.
Yeah.
And I've seen it, go around. It's interesting. The first time I went to West, have you met a guy named Sammy Awad? Awad? Yeah, he lives in Bethlehem. His uncle Mubarak Awad is considered the Gandhi of the West Bank, and he's these are Palestinian people who have lived in the area of Palestine since almost Jesus's day. But, when Israel became a nation, they lost their property and their land and were placed into these retention centers. They're basically, refugee camps around Israel, so like Gaza, like West Bank, and there's other ones too. There's these refugee camps that I've toured that border Jordan and Syria and Lebanon, and these, there's. So I love the fact that you used your voice to do the Free Palestine. How did you end up connecting to the work in Palestine with Palestinians? Is that how did you end up coming into connection with the Palestinian work? I'm just curious.
Like for that specific
Not
song?
necessarily for the song, but I'm that song had so much in it that I was guessing that you had some kind of background in working with Palestinians. No, none. Okay. You were
No,
just responding to the to
yeah, I
the
mean,
the tragedy of Gaza.
yeah, I told you before in the beginning of the interview, I'm not an activist, I'm an artist.
Okay.
And the job of an artist, like Nina Simone says, is to reflect the times.
Mm,
Um, just as I have a song about Palestine, I have songs about police brutality and the treatment of Black people and mass incarceration here in America. I have songs and poems about Syria and what was happening in Syria 2015-16 and the killing of innocent children under the, I believe, Bashar and Obama administration. I have songs about all these different things that speak to me where I don't have the words to speak when
mm,
I'm witnessing what's going on in Gaza, and what happened on October 7th.
hmm.
There
Right.
were images that I saw of young Shani Luke being thrown in
Mhm.
the back of a truck, a young Israeli woman that gutted me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It gutted me. And so it's like I see these things, I see these pains, and that's why I speak in Free Palestine. I speak about our Jewish siblings as well.
Hmm.
Um, the beauty of seeing Jewish people speak up also and say, hey, this doesn't reflect me and how I feel and how I serve my God. My God would not be okay with this,
Yeah.
you know. So this is what I mean when I say I'm not an activist. It's not, I haven't worked with Palestinian activists in the past. This is just wrong,
Mm.
what I'm seeing, and I am moved to speak on it.
Yeah.
I have with many other issues. But I do have Palestinian God sisters that lost 3 or 4 brothers in the 1980s in the Intifada. And I apologize if I'm not saying all the facts correctly, but they lost 4 brothers to state-sanctioned violence from Israel.
Mm.
And that's something that always stuck with me as a child. This is what I'm learning about as a child. And keep in mind my father, how he raised us, that the Torah, the people of the book are our siblings. Jewish, Christian, Islam, all people, even outside of monotheistic religions, are all children of God. Don't fall for the division when they try to tell you Muslims are like this or Jewish people are like this. The anti-Semitism we're seeing, that's never been a thing for me.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? So,
Yeah. I totally get what you mean.
yeah.
I've always tried to say, hey, I'm just pro people. Like I'm pro Palestinian. I'm pro I'm pro my Jewish brothers and sisters. I'm pro, you know, I I'm just pro people. But when you see the atrocities, it's just like, oh my goodness.
There's no
Yeah.
excuse. There's
Yeah.
no rationale. If you find yourself rationalizing of why this is happening, you need to do some real deep reflection and find your humanity because
Yeah.
you've lost it.
Yeah.
It's gone. And we're all just the sum of our ideologies and the fairy tale tooth fairies of our parents and grandparents. You need to realize what you've been told and
Mhm.
indoctrinated in. Take a step back as an adult. As an adult, you have the power to take a step back and take inventory of what you've been taught versus objectively what is not right here.
Mm.
Any indoctrination based on dehumanization, I'll tell you already is wrong. So start there and think deeply. Just think for yourself.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I thank you. Well, moving into the current situation that we're in the world, I'm thinking of. But I we're running out of time, but I was curious. Did you watch the Super Bowl halftime performance with Kendrick
Yes,
Lamar? And
sure
yeah,
did.
I did it. So I'd been listening to Kendrick's new album, and the whole Drake thing, and I'd listened to SZA's new album, and I love all that stuff. And most of my white friends had never heard one of those songs that were performed at the halftime performance. But I thought the depth of the narrative storytelling of the critique of, I really felt like it was a fascinating storytelling of a critique of, you know, Black America on white America. I mean, there was a lot of critique on that was going on there in the storytelling. What were your thoughts on that? I was just curious.
Oh, well, now I'm curious of your thoughts on. I
Well,
mean, because I
I
mean, different
honestly,
people
I was
perceive
just,
art differently, so I'm curious of how your perception was.
yeah, I ended up just diving into, uh, what I started doing was searching out really smart Black theologians uh, did a deep dive on the narrative storytelling that was done that in that halftime performance. So, like Adam Clark is a friend of mine who teaches Black theology at Xavier University. He did his PhD under James Cone. So I was, so I was more diving into those kind of people and their perspective. I had just been a fan of the music, and I don't think I caught it all as it was going on. I loved the songs, but I think that there was a pretty big critique of white America on that whole performance. I don't know. White supremacy, white privilege from what am I? Yeah, that's what I gathered from all the people I was reading. So
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's the thing with art and perception and perspective. That's why I was just curious of like
Yeah.
what you took from it.
Yeah. I kind of did a deep dive that way. So
I see. I
yeah.
see. Yeah, I didn't do any diving or research of like how people perceived it, but how I perceived it is more along Kendrick's journey of trying to play the game. That's why I saw like the X's and the circles and the squares as a gamer. It looks like a PlayStation remote.
Like
And as a fan of Squid Games, they
Squid
also
Games. Yeah.
use these symbols. It's like a game, and he's like hopping around these different levels of the game, trying to navigate. Maybe it's white America or the music industry,
Yeah.
which is predominantly white owned.
Hmm.
White ran. Um, of him, like he is who he is where he's from, and he wears his culture on his back very proudly. Um, in his maybe need not trying not to conform and still play the game and still stay true to his
Hmm.
message. Um, as an artist who's also have navigated similar industries but had I would say a lower level, less exposure. That's what I got from it,
Hmm.
trying to navigate. And you had Samuel L. Jackson, his Uncle Sam.
Yep.
He's kind of like telling him throughout, he's like, nah, that's not how you play the game. You can't say that. You can't, like, that's too ghetto. That's what I'm hearing him say throughout of like, come on, son, like you gotta know how to play the game, like the older generation. And as we have newer generations come in, they're less likely to play these games, and yeah, I don't know what the ultimate message was after that, but I felt like he was, also speaking to artists like there's a way to still become successful and not completely sell your soul.
Yeah. I loved it. It was so funny because and immediately you had, anyway, many of my white friends were like, "That's the worst halftime performance." They didn't know one
Really?
song. They didn't know any of
Oh,
it.
because they
They
weren't
they
familiar with
they
it's
didn't
not
even
like
know one of the songs. I
pop.
was sitting there watching it with my mom and dad. My dad's going to turn 90 this May, and my mom's 88. And we were watching it. Of course, they didn't know one of the songs. It's just so funny. But
That's so
they know
fascinating.
I love hip hop music, so they were like trying to get my take on it. It was so cute to watch my 90-year-old mom and dad try to figure out why I liked it.
Yes, yeah. Never thought about it like that. Yeah, maybe most of white America, like they are not super popular songs, except like not like us is of course massive. And he's had hits before that I'm familiar with, but I never really looked at a perspective of like maybe like because like before the Jay-Z started helping with the halftime show, it was more like Prince, who's like universally known and has
Right.
like from spanning decades, spanning generations. So like that generational,
Hmm.
older generation could also tap in and be like, oh, I know this song. So yeah, I guess it does make it even more powerful that he was still able to get that halftime show. And I'm sure Jay-Z had a Rock Nation and them had a lot to do with that, with their connection with
Mm.
the NFL.
Yeah. Well, fascinating. Well, I want to be mindful of your time. We're running up against the time, but what give us just a quick, what's going on now with you, and what do you see for the next, you know, foreseeable near future in your work, your artistry, your voice? What give us a take and then help people find your work.
Oh, I want to show you this painting I did.
Can you do a spoken poetry for us to close us out too? That's what I was wondering.
This is an oil painting.
Oh, beautiful.
Children being children.
Isn't that nice? It's a Jewish child hugging and embracing a Palestinian child.
Children being children.
Children being children. Beautiful.
Um, then, so what's happening this week, which is very exciting and 8 years in the making, is Mississippi Turning, our documentary, is launching
Yes.
in New York,
Yes.
Judson Memorial, March 23rd, this coming Sunday.
I've been reading about that.
And
Uh,
Reverend Jackie Lewis will be moderating panel with myself and Irshad Manji. Um, Executively produced by Anjanou Ellis Taylor, Oscar-nominated actress and breakout. So that follows my protest. It opens with my protest and follows my collaborative journey to change the Mississippi state flag. And of course, it culminates in a collaborative win when the state flag is finally changed in
mm,
2021. A very, very powerful.
Mississippi Turning. This will
Follows
come
my
out after that premiere, but how can people, that'll come
Yep.
out as a documentary, right? It'd be,
Yep, and it's going to be the most accessible way to find it is on the Moral Courage YouTube channel. It will be the channel's trailer. So just Moral Courage YouTube, and maybe you can, if you have a newsletter, if you can send out that link to your people.
yep. Sam's writing
Um,
it down right now. So I see him. Excellent.
yeah, and folks can follow me on Instagram, and the link will be in my bio link, and it's just at Genesis B. Yeah, so that's what's coming up in most important to me in this moment, this week. And then with People Not Things, it's a traveling art exhibit where I now showcase and amplify the voices of artists who are traditionally kind of nudged out of fine art spaces, whether it be like incarcerated artists who are currently incarcerated and being able to show their work to the public and confront the public with their humanity. This August, I'm teaming up with Collinwald Fine Arts Center here in Atlanta to showcase emerging Black queer women who have not shown in a museum or gallery yet or have little experience. So who are highly talented and skilled artists whose work deserves to be heard and voice deserves to be heard. So that'll be happening this August, People Not Things art exhibit.
Very beautiful. We got to get you to Kansas City. One of my dear friends, Calvin Arseni, I've connected you briefly, by text, I think, but he runs Greenwood Social Hall here in Kansas City. And he's a black harp player, 6'8" black harp player. He calls himself the world's tallest harp player. And but he's classically trained, but he does EDM and hip hop and all kinds of things. And he Greenwood Social Hall is an event center for artists, musicians who have been historically marginalized in America. So it's for women, people of color, Black artists, queer artists, and he's part of the queer community here in Kansas City. He's been voted as the #1 musician in Kansas City 7 years in a row by Pitch Magazine.
Whoa, congratulations.
So we partner together on so many things. He plays at my church sometimes, and we want to get you to Kansas City with this tour. That would be so cool. Can you close us?
I have a poem with my book, People Not Things. It's a poetry book you can grab off of Barnes & Noble's, Amazon, anywhere books are sold. It's a series.
I missed that. Dang it. I tried to check everything out. So People Not Things.
Mm-hmm.
Is this an expansion on the piece that you wrote on your website, the shorter piece with the meditation and question practice?
No, that's the philosophy of People Not Things. This is the painting and poetries. You'll see.
Okay.
Each painting has a poem, and they all fall within the 4 barriers of the philosophy.
Oh, cool. All right, folks, get the book.
So before I say this, I just want to give a shout out. I want to thank you all for having me on to your show. And I want to shout out Rob and Ali Colburn for inviting me to perform at the rooftop. They're good people. They're like family to me, because I wouldn't have met you without that invitation. And this is just what it's about. It's about people and connection and continuing to expand our connections with people.
You bet. Yeah, Rod's on my Spirituality Adventures board, so love them. I'll be at Mountain Film. I wish you'd join us this May. You know the Mountain Film crowd?
Yeah, Rod brought me out there one time, and it was a very beautiful experience.
It's awesome.
Not sure if I'll make it that May though.
Okay. Can you close us with a?
Yeah, I want to share this poem. So this is the painting that goes with the poem. It's called I Ain't Free. You'll see the barrier strokes, but what might be harder to see is the little people behind interacting with.
For those on audio only, she's showing us her painting that's in the book. And so she's explaining the painting.
There's little people interacting with the barriers and the bars. I ain't free. So it's a concept around the illusion of freedom. I ain't free. The illusion of freedom is far more dangerous than jail cells and cramped cages. My tax dollars killed a child yesterday. I ain't free. Neither is she. My freedom is dependent on the imprisonment of another. I ain't free. Neither is he.
What's the famous quote? We're not free till we're all free. I'm wrestling with. That's beautiful. Oh my goodness.
And it's true. And as long as I am a pawn of the industry of division, meaning my tax dollars killed somebody yesterday, literally, and my freedom is dependent on the imprisonment of another. Those are literal things. Mm-hmm. As long as that is the case, my freedom is just an illusion. It's not true. It's not true.
Thank you, Genesis.
Thank you so much for having me. I
love your art, love your voice, and I'm so grateful that I've been able to connect with you both here and previously. So hope to happen more often, and maybe I hope even in Kansas City one of these days. So
make it happen.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Peace be with you.
You too. Thanks everybody for tuning into Spirituality Adventures, and we'll see you next time. Hey, you made it to the end. Thanks for listening all the way through on this episode. By the way, if you're not already a supporter, go to spiritualityadventures.com, sign up for one of our monthly supports, and you will receive our bonus content. You'll receive lots of interesting information about our guests. Many of our musicians will do special bonus songs and record a song. So I want to encourage you to do that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Be sure and subscribe. Be sure and share any of the episodes that you like. And be sure and make comments if you like them as well. This helps us get Spirituality Adventures out there to more listeners, more watchers. So whatever platform you're using, subscribe, like, share, make comments, and go to our website, sign up for our team, and be a part of the team support. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.